There was not any the least trace of an entrance having been forced to the chamber, but the casement stood open, as my poor friend would always have it in this season. He had his evening drink of small ale in a silver vessel of about a pint measure, and to-night had not drunk it out. This drink was examined by the physician from Bury, a Mr. Hodgkins, who could not, however, as he afterwards declared upon his oath before the coroner's quest, discover that any matter of a venomous kind was present in it. For as was natural in the great swelling and blackness of the corpse, there was talk made among the neighbours of poison. The body was very much disordered as it laid in the bed, being twisted after so extreme a sort as grave to probable conjecture that my worthy friend and patron had expired in great pain and agony. And what is as yet unexplained, and to myself the argument of some horrid and artful design in the perpetrators of this barbarous murder, was this, that the women which were entrusted with the laying out of the corpse and washing it, being both sad persons and very well respected in their mournful profession, came to me in a great pain and distress both of mind and body, saying, what was indeed confirmed upon the first view, that they had no sooner touched the breast of the corpse with their naked hands than they were sensible of a more than ordinary violent smart and aching in their palms, which, with their whole forearms in no long time, swelled so immoderately, the pain still continuing, that as afterwards provoked during many weeks they were forced to lay by the exercise of their calling, and yet no marks seen on the skin. Upon hearing this I sent for the physician, who was still in the house, and we made as careful a proof as we were able, by the help of a small magnifying lens of crystal, of the condition of the skin on this part of the body, but could not detect with the instrument we had any matter of importance beyond a couple of punctures or pricks, which we then concluded were the spots by which the poison might be introduced, remembering that ring of Pope Borgia, with other known specimens of the horrid art of the Italian poisoners of the last age. So much is to be said of the symptoms seen on the corpse. As to what I am to add, it is merely my own experiment, and to be left to posterity to judge whether there be anything of value therein. There was on the table by the bedside a Bible of the small size, in which my friend, punctual as in matters of less moment, so in this more weighty one, used nightly, and upon his first rising to read a set portion. And I taking it up, not without a tear duly paid to him, which from the study of this poorer adumbration was now passed to the contemplation of its great original, it came into my thoughts, as at such moments of helplessness we are prone to catch at any the least glimmer that makes promise of light, to make a trial of that old, and by many accounted superstitious practice of drawing the sorts, of which a principal instance, in the case of his late sacred Majesty the blessed martyr King Charles, and my Lord Falkland, was now much talked of. I must needs admit that by my trial not much assistance was afforded me, yet as the cause and origin of these dreadful events may hereafter be searched out, I set down the results. In the case it may be found that they pointed the true quarter of the mischief to a quicker intelligence than my own. I made then 3 trials, opening the book and placing my finger upon certain words, which gave in the first these words from Luke chapter 13 verse 7, cut it down. In the second, Isaiah chapter 13 verse 20, it shall never be inhabited. And upon the third experiment, Job chapter 39 verse 30, her young ones also suck up blood. This is all that need be quoted from Mr. Crome's papers. Sir Matthew Fell was duly confined and laid into the earth, and his funeral sermon, preached by Mr. Crome on the following Sunday, has been printed under the title of The Unsearchable Way, or England's Danger and the Malicious Dealings of Antichrist, it being the vicar's view, as well as that most commonly held in the neighbourhood, that the squire was the victim of a recrudescence of the popish plot. His son, Sir Matthew the Second, succeeded to the title and estates, and so ends the first act of the Castringham tragedy. It is to be mentioned, though the fact is not surprising, that the new baronet did not occupy the room in which his father had died, nor indeed was it slept in by any one but an occasional visitor during the whole of its occupation. He died in 1735, and I do not find that anything particular marked his reign, save a curiously constant mortality among his cattle and livestock in general, which showed a tendency to increase slightly as time went on. Those who are interested in the details will find a statistical account in a letter to the Gentleman's Magazine of 1772, which draws the facts from the baronet's own papers. He put an end to it at last by a very simple expedient, that of shutting up all of his beasts in sheds at night and keeping no sheep in his park, for he had noticed that nothing was ever attacked that spent the night indoors. After that, the disorder confined itself to wild birds and beasts of chase. But as we have no good account of the symptoms, and as all night watching was quite unproductive of any clue, I do not dwell on what the Suffolk farmers called the Castringham sickness. The second Sir Matthew died in 1735, as I said, and was duly succeeded by his son Sir Richard. It was in his time that the great family pew was built out on the north side of the parish church. So large were the squire's ideas that several of the graves on that unhallowed side of the building had to be disturbed to satisfy his requirements. Among them was that of Mrs. Mothersole, the position of which was accurately known, thanks to a note on a plan of the church and yard both made by Mr. Crome. A certain amount of interest was excited in the village when it was known that the famous witch, who was still remembered by a few, was to be exhumed, and the feeling of surprise and indeed disquiet was very strong when it was found that, though her coffin was fairly sound and unbroken, there was no trace whatever inside it of a body, bones, or dust. Indeed, it is a curious phenomenon, for at the time of her burying no such things were dreamt of as resurrection men, and it is difficult to conceive any rational motive for stealing a body otherwise than for the uses of the dissecting room. The incident revived for a time all the stories of witch trials and of the exploits of the witches, dormant for 40 years, and Sir Richard's orders that the coffin should be burnt were thought by a good many to be rather foolhardy, though they were duly carried out. Sir Richard was a pestilent innovator, it is certain. Before his time the hall had been a fine block of the mellowest red brick, but Sir Richard had travelled in Italy and become infected with the Italian taste, and, having more money than his predecessors, he determined to leave an Italian palace where he had found an English house. So stucco and ashlar masked the brick, some indifferent Roman marbles were planted about in the entrance hall and gardens. A reproduction of the Sibyl's Temple at Tivoli was erected on the opposite bank of the mire, and Castringham took on an entirely new, and I must say, a less engaging aspect. But it was much admired, and served as a model to a good many of the neighbouring gentry in after years.